Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Selling. I am Sean Rhodes, the Chief Systems Architect here and author of Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Here at Bulletproof Selling, as you hear every single week, every live stream broadcast, and every podcast that we do, we believe that hope is not a business strategy. And we're here to replace that hope with the systems that top performers use to get consistently better results. Now, this weekly Bulletproof series, it's sharing insights from the top minds in sales, authors, speakers, experts, and also those out there in the field managing salespeople in a very interesting time in the world of selling. So my commitment to you is by the end of this show, we will develop a sales system that you can use no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals. So joining us today is Alex Texeira, and I'm going to make sure I try to pronounce that name right by the end of it, because I love your last name, man. It's actually unique, right? Because the spelling of it is a little bit different than what you'd be used to normally, but I love that, dude. And so Alex is joining us today because he is actually a sales manager. He's got a bunch of salespeople under him. He's a fairly young guy, so I'm interested to hear about how his progression to being a sales manager happened so quickly in his life, because there are probably guys and gals twice his age that don't manage as many salespeople. But Alex, man, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about you, your company, what you do, and about how many salespeople you manage. And then I've got a lot of questions to ask you about, one, how you got to where you are, and two, how your salespeople have been dealing with this transition to inside sales, and of course, what they're doing now to be successful. So Alex, brother, go for it.
Absolutely. Thanks. So Alex Texeira, it's Portuguese. They misspelled my grandfather's name when he came over from the islands.
Cool.
I work for CCS Construction Staffing. We're a skilled labor provider, so think electricians, plumbers, things like that. We staff only to the construction industry. And I'm currently managing 18 sales reps, 3 managers across 7 different states.
Nice. Okay, and tell us a little bit about your business model, construction staffing. I mean, a lot of us are familiar with staffing firms. What makes construction staffing unique? So for the folks that may not know anything about staffing, they're like, well, that's interesting. People pay you to find construction workers. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Correct. So there's a huge skills gap in America, and staffing's been around forever. You can staff any industry, and we pick construction. So if there's a crane in the sky, if they're building something, we have a lead and an opportunity. And a lot of times there's just gaps in either how many people are available for a deadline, or maybe it's a short-term project that they're doing out of town, and so they utilize staffing instead of a direct hire approach.
That's amazing. So your salespeople, then tell us a little bit about their role. Is it to both identify that skilled labor and to know about the companies in their area that are looking for that skilled labor? So they've got to kind of handle 2 prospect bases at the same time. Tell us a little bit how that works.
So we actually have within CCS, we have our recruiters, and then we have our account managers. So our who I manage is directly sales and account management. They're going out there and prospecting and driving the business. And then we have recruiters, which are good at what they do, and that's finding the skilled labor and getting us the people. It's 2 different entities that work as one machine.
Gotcha. All right. And so for the kind of business model that your salespeople have, is it identifying the firms then and matching people up with the firms? Is that how that works?
Yes. So it's who's doing construction in your area. And a lot of times it is local, sometimes it's out of town, and then prospecting those, do they need to utilize additional labor? So that's 100% what they're doing, is they're going out to these job sites, they're going out to these local offices and seeing if they need to utilize skilled labor.
Love it. Okay. And so I thank you for that overview. I know that's going to help a lot of our listeners and viewers. So let's walk into your journey, your story. All right. How did you get to manage so many salespeople at such a young age? Walk me through what got you into that track.
So I used to do industrial sales, and then I got a call one day to come over here to construction staffing, and I left a big corporate company to come to a smaller one. I think there's 10 or 12 of us at a time, about 7 years ago. And we were just on a really high growth trajectory. I think we were flying. I was personally flying by the seat of my pants, just selling on sheer grit and determination. And then as we continued to grow, we needed that next level of management. And so I moved from Charleston, South Carolina to Florida to start up a new territory, grew it. And then as we continued to grow, it's just kind of a snowball effect. And it's kind of like you talk about, we learned a lot of processes along the way, because you can't just sheer will your way to success.
Yeah, we say in Bulletproof Selling here that hope is not a sales strategy. So we can't just hope the right people show up or that we know what to say when we get on the phone. So with the amount of salespeople you oversee, did that team grow or shrink in 2020?
It actually grew. So our company's perspective was, this is our opportunity to take share of the pie. Where a lot of people were moving back, it's where we could make more customer touches, where we could try to be more aggressive. So that's actually the approach we took.
And nice. So, and that's actually right in line with our motto here, right? It's all about taking the initiative. Because if we don't take the initiative in sales, that means we're kind of waiting for the phone to ring or waiting for the inquiries to come in, and that's a really bad way to prospect. But yet, so many people, that's their strategy. So, in 2020, early part of 2020, I mean, the industry was riding a great wave, and it's still largely in construction because a lot of people are still riding the wave of 2019's contracts or 2020 early contracts, right?
Yep.
So everything was doing great, and then COVID-19 happened. Now, what did you see change in the salespeople that you were managing and in their world? I mean, did everything just shut down? It became impossible to reach people, or were they still able to get a hold of folks because they were riding the wave of that contractual cycle?
I think it was just so much unknown. Some projects came to a dead halt, like hospitals, but then other projects went full speed. Nobody knew what to do with school. So it was just every customer, every person didn't know what they were doing. Like, I'm from Florida. There's a lot of Universal Studios, Disney,
Mhm.
they all stopped. So hundreds of employees stopped working overnight and they had to find them work. So while some companies were really hurting, some were growing still and moving forward. So it was just a lot of unknown and trying to information gather. And then when you add the PPP and all this other stuff in staffing, everybody was on a call every day trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, and so for your salespeople, then I imagine they were used to, having a set list of questions, like here are the things we need to know to determine fit, to identify decision makers, and suddenly they were expected to also be experts in a host of other issues, right? PPP, and how do we bring in people and make sure that they're, COVID negative, right? They've had testing. They're going to be working side by side with other people in my company, and I'm a construction owner, right, of a company like that. So, what things did your salespeople quickly figure out that they had to be experts in order to still add value to their prospects' lives?
I think listening. Uh,
Mm,
Again,
that's a
every
good
job
point.
site was different. I mean, if you're working on a hospital that's existing or you're working on a new construction project, there's different requirements, different needs. So really just listening and understanding what that particular customer and particular job site required. Whereas
Okay.
before it's pretty general what's needed. It was very specific for each company because again, everybody was changing at different levels. How
Mm.
fast, how secure, what was required, what wasn't, and so it's just listening. I think was the biggest thing.
And so a lot of sales managers, a lot of sales leaders, tune into this live stream. So, love to know from you, like me, I probably on the millennial cusp, right? Maybe early millennial. What is different about how you see salespeople learning how to listen? Because this is a critical element no matter how long we've been in sales or what our position is, whether we're leaders, whether we're frontline salespeople. How do you make sure that your folks learn how to listen in this day and age where we're just bombarded with information all the time? And a lot of salespeople think the faster that I can talk, the faster I can get my benefits and features out there, the quicker that I can make sales, when you and I know that's just not the case. So how do we teach people how to listen?
I think the biggest thing is get on the phone.
Okay. We're going to dive more into that, man. I love it. So you actually have to have conversations with people.
Correct. I don't know how many emails you can send with multiple questions where you get one answer out of the
Right.
four. And it's just, pick up the phone. If you're unsure, pick up the phone and have a conversation. You can get their feeling of what's going on. You can ask more questions. And it's a lot easier to get everything you need. People read messages in whatever mood you're in. If
Mm.
you're in a bad mood, you can send a nice email and they read it in a negative connotation. It's just like text messages and stuff. So get on the phone so you can hear what their concerns are, so you can hear what their needs are. And I think that's really the biggest hurdle.
And so call reluctance is a thing that most sales managers deal with either every day or in cycles throughout their career. As long as they're managing salespeople, then those salespeople are going to have call reluctance to some level. How do you deal with that in the salespeople that you manage?
I think we try to avoid minimum metrics, phone call, how many touches we're making, but I really try to look at quality conversations. How many
Mm.
quality touches are we having, and stop psyching yourself out. The call can only be so bad. The worst thing they're going to do is say no. Nobody's going to, you might get yelled at, but stop psyching yourself out. People want to research every single call. And it's really not that complicated.
And so, how do you then manage your salespeople into having quality conversations? Because salespeople, of course, can have a call goal each day, 20 calls, 50 calls, 300 calls, but they might just be smiling and dialing. So, how do I, one, ensure, how do you define a quality conversation in your industry? Step one. And then step two, how do you make sure that you're monitoring how many quality conversations your salespeople have? Because a conversation and a quality conversation, there may be a world of difference between those two, as we know.
Oh, 100%. It's CRM, logging our conversations that we're actually having. Because again, like you said, somebody can have 150 calls, somebody could have 60, and the guy that if he's talking to everybody, he's having the better day.
Yep. And so in the CRM then, and I love having guys and gals like you on the show, man, because you said CRM and just like bells are ringing in my head because I cannot manage more than probably one conversation from memory.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone 6 months after I talk to somebody and I try to remember what we talked about, what their budget might have been, what they needed to hear from me. Oh, that's impossible for one conversation 6 months ago, even. Yet I'm trying to manage prospects at scale, trying to fill my pipeline. All these conversations have to happen, and that data has to live somewhere. So, as a sales manager, you're going into your salespeople's accounts. I imagine you have access to, at least check out what they're doing in there in their CRM, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Correct.
perfect. So for that, what are you looking for to determine quality conversation? So at a glance, that wasn't just a phone call, that wasn't just a voicemail left. That was I got quality data out of that prospect that I can then use to further them in my pipeline. What are you looking for in the CRM?
Couple of key things. I love seeing emails that say "Thanks for speaking with me," because if you're having conversations, you're closer to closing business. How many contracts are we sending out, especially in newer growth territories? You need those new accounts. How many quotes we're sending out to maybe active customers? So there's a couple of key things that obviously show that quality.
So you're looking for leading indicators up to the actual point of sale rather than what we would consider like early pipeline activity, which is just gross number of phone calls, gross number of emails. I'm looking for actual interactions then is what it sounds like in this sales cycle. And talk to me a little bit about your sales cycle. Is there, kind of an average in your industry from first point of contact to getting them, a closed deal, what you would consider getting people that are quality and that are qualified onto their construction site? Is there a series of months or years that might take?
So it's real. It's constructions hurry up and wait, and then now you're behind. So it's, hey, we don't need anything. We don't need anything. And then Friday afternoon, we need 10 guys Monday.
Right. And they all have to be certified and qualified and everything else. Okay.
100%. So it's really about getting your name out there and becoming a person, checking that box. Because every company, it could be a superintendent, like one decision maker. Another company could have 15. So it's about qualifying your customers to know who is decision makers. And I think really the sales probably lose the most sales from lost follow-ups. They call
that's interesting. Okay.
a school could be 2.5 years under construction, and they might call on it twice.
Right.
And so if you don't utilize that CRM and follow up consistently, you're going to miss the opportunity. And I think people go out and get leads and they don't follow up on them. And I think that's why the majority of people lose business is they're overcomplicating and they're looking for shortcuts.
And so talk to me about the shortcuts that you see a lot of salespeople manage, because as somebody that has managed some salespeople in the past, if I manage good people now, it means I had to either fire or let go of a lot of salespeople up until this point, right? I imagine you're in the same place. You had to let go of a lot of salespeople or invite them to find happiness elsewhere. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
What did you see the salespeople that eventually left your organization? What were they doing to, hope that that lead would get back to them? Was it just like firing an email off and then I didn't hear back in a couple of weeks, so I'm just going to let that one float off into the ether? What were some things that you were keeping an eye on to be like, oh, that's an early warning sign that this person probably is not doing the right things?
The two biggest things for me are pigeonholing yourself. Oh, I talked to Bob, he doesn't need anything. Well, companies have multiple decision makers, and even if they're not the signee, they have impact on the person that does sign that contract. So take multiple angles of approach and keep knocking on that door. When you pigeonhole yourself and say negative, 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 you've kind of given up on the sale, even though there can be a really good opportunity there. The second thing is just lazy emails. Everybody has mass marketing campaigns, and that's a cookie cutter email. But the reason why it works is because you send thousands and thousands of them out, and you
With
get
that
very
0.004% response rate, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
When you go out and get the leads and you have names and you have reference points, use them.
Mm.
It builds instant credibility in that first sentence and that subject line to have a reference point, and people will open your email. And so many times I see sales reps just cutting corners and they build a mass mailer out of Outlook and they found the easy way to do it. And it, that's the biggest red flag for me is that sales isn't hard. It's
Mm.
just doing the little things you don't get credit for consistently. And those are the corners they tend to cut.
So those are wise words, wise enough that I want to repeat them, make sure I captured them. Sales is doing what consistently or not doing what consistently?
The little things you don't get credit for.
Ah, okay. The little things you don't get credit for. That's what, one of the many, I'm sure, key features of a great salesperson. So talk to me about what some of the little things that your salespeople don't get credit for that you want to ensure that they do as often as possible across their prospects.
Reference points, utilizing names, utilizing job site names, people you've talked to, utilizing the information you have in emails and conversations, I think is a big one. Setting tasks, utilizing these little CRM features where, I'm not going to pat you on your back every day for these little things, but when you do it consistently over time, it's a snowball effect. And next thing you know, you have a really good pipeline.
So let's talk about how we build a pipeline through those little tasks. And for the listeners here that are maybe on the early end of their sales journey, let's talk about what defines a pipeline, right? So Alex, talk to us about if I'm a brand new salesperson and I'm in training for your company, and you say pipeline, I raise my hand and I go, dude, what's a pipeline? What's your response?
Pipeline, I would say, is any kind of verbal or written commitment to do business at some point in the future.
Okay, so these are qualified leads. They have budget, they have need. If not today, then at some point in the future, right?
Yep, it could be as simple as, hey, I have a need coming up in the beginning of summer.
Right.
And now I'm starting to build my pipeline for summer.
Okay. So in your business then, in the business model you manage with your salespeople, your pipeline is largely defined by seasons then, yeah? Who's expected to come up in what season? Is that accurate?
Yeah, summer does a lot of school renovations, so yes, but really just you could talk to somebody and they say, call me back in 2 weeks. You could talk to somebody and they say, hey, I just landed a couple really big jobs, follow up with me in the fall. So it goes back to just listening, but as soon as I hear those words, that's pipeline.
Love it. Okay, good, good. So talk to me a little bit about some of the tasks that you encourage your salespeople to have within their CRM on their accounts to ensure that they are utilizing those reference points. And when you mention reference points, probably a good idea to define that for people too, because I hear reference point and I think I need to make sure that I mention Bob who referred me to Sally. Right? That's a reference point. That's a mutual connection. But another reference point in what you're talking about might be, and please correct me here for what you do with your salespeople. Another reference point might be, reaching out after that conversation we had 2 weeks ago. Another reference point, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So talk to me about how you encourage your salespeople to utilize their CRMs to make sure that there are those follow-up tasks so that they don't lose prospects off into the ether.
So anytime you have that quality conversation where somebody's kind of committed to a follow-up or they've given you a little bit of pipeline, I like to follow up typically 1 to 2 weeks before they tell me to, because with construction and things change so quickly. So if it's, hey, follow up with me in March, I'm following up towards the end of February to say, hey, I want to see if we're still on track, to see
Ah,
if things have changed. Because what I found is if you don't have that relationship with the customer, they're going to call who they're familiar with when that need arises. And you might miss that window if you wait for the exact date. So it's just about being a little bit ahead of the curve and making sure that they remember you and not who say they currently use.
And I found that to tag in on this, man, is definitely a dual conversation because I'm really excited about this system that I think we're about to build. I have an idea in my head; it's floating around, and I think it's going to make your salespeople a lot of money, and of course anybody listening a lot of money. But in order to motivate salespeople, because they are in one of those roles where their base salary might not be enough to just barely keep the lights on, it's the commissions that they're really aiming for, right? So talk to me a little bit about if I have a quality prospect in your business model and I forget to follow up with them. So I forget to set a follow-up task. We have a great conversation, but for whatever reason, it slips my mind. The phone rings, the cat barfs on the carpet, like whatever, right? What's at stake financially for a single salesperson on a deal? And I get that the approximation might be pretty wide, but what would you say the average loss might be if I just forget, to follow up with somebody and somebody else gets the business?
I guess it depends on how big the order is, but I mean, it could be thousands of dollars because we do billable hours. So, a school, you could have guys out for 6 months, 7 months of generated revenue, which could be a huge opportunity. And what we found in staffing is you're reaching into a labor pool within that market. So if you don't get that first shot, you're digging into the same labor pool as everybody else.
Oh.
So, you start scraping the bottom of the barrel if you're the third, fourth, fifth to the show. So that first opportunity is so important to get the best quality out there.
And so if I'm a salesperson and I want to be financially motivated to make sure I'm setting a follow-up task. And so if I'm one of your salespeople, what a message that would really get my attention and help me out with the numbers here to make sure they're accurate. Is $10,000 on the line if I forget to follow up with Bob, who runs a construction company? Is it 20,000? Is it 50,000? What's that number look like?
I mean, probably closer to a couple $1,000s.
All right, so like
We run a lot
$3,000.
of,
Okay, yeah,
we
and
run a lot of
enough of those in volume, right? That's quite a bit of money.
yeah, yeah,
And that's that $3,000, let's say, is my personal commission as a salesperson, right?
yep.
And that's per individual that I'm, helping pair with another construction company.
So again, it's billable hours. So it depends on how many people, how high that bill rate is how much it's going to impact you.
Okay. And
So
what do you say is the average amount of people that one of your salespeople might, fit inside of a single contract with a construction company?
some of the largest construction sites we've had, 50, 60, 70
Nice. So
people
that
on site.
50 or 60 times 3,000 a head?
I mean, if it was the course of a huge project potentially, but
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's enough to buy a house with, dude. I love that. Okay. All right. So let's dig into building a system around this because this is an absolutely critical element to managing contacts outside of our heads, to not using hope as a strategy. Let's talk about how to make sure that we don't lose track of someone that is a qualified prospect in our pipeline, in our CRM. So, as you've heard from past episodes, anybody listening, and I know Alex, you're very tuned into this. We use a system we call TRIM. So it's trimming hope away from our sales strategy. It's a simple acronym, TRIM. The first thing on it is a trigger. So to bring a system into play, which you and I are going to build right now, we have to have a trigger for when that system comes in. So if a salesperson's talking with someone in your industry, they're qualified, they're running a company, they might have a need in the summer, might be for a school. How do I know to set a follow-up task on them within my CRM? What happens in that conversation that says this is a valuable enough opportunity, I need to call back?
as soon as they say I could potentially,
Those are great words, right?
that means that I'm following up, because if they're already in construction, if you can potentially need it, then you probably most definitely need it.
Okay. All right. So I might have that need in the summer. In your mind, let's bring that follow-up system into play, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So the second one after trigger is then R, is TR for trim, and that's making it repeatable. And so for a lot of salespeople, making the follow-up repeatable is a little tricky, because if all we're doing is pounding them with an email, we may be hitting a spam filter. It may be going right to junk mail. We may never hear them. Even if all we're doing is leaving voicemail messages, sometimes people just don't respond to voicemail. I know your salespeople have plenty of prospects where phone is great for a conversation, but if I'm trying to encourage them to take an action, voicemail just ain't going to do it. Maybe it's LinkedIn, maybe it's a letter, right? There's a lot of different ways to get in touch with prospects.
Correct.
So if I want to make follow-up repeatable, should I focus on differing my type of outreach, kind of using that omni-channel communication? Or in your industry, have you found just making it repeatable is set a follow-up task for 2 weeks? How would you encourage your salespeople to make follow-up repeatable? So if I've got that person that said I could potentially, I make sure I'm using a consistent process.
So I always start, I mean, phone call is always my top of the list. But then, yes, if you're not getting through, I mean, do you have a business card with a cell phone number? How many people call gatekeepers all the time instead of directly to the decision maker? And then email, text, LinkedIn, you use different channels if you're not getting anywhere for sure. But set a task and make a phone call.
So set a task, make a phone call, and to make sure that that phone call maybe isn't the last thing either, right, on this qualified opportunity.
Correct. I mean, anytime you talk to somebody or don't talk to somebody, there should be an email. Either thank you for speaking with me or sorry I missed you. There's no reason to not send the second channel of communication.
Right. Well, that's brilliant because, like you said, a lot of people, I mean, might accidentally delete that voicemail message or that email might never have gotten to me. So I want to make sure we're using all the communication channels available. We even joke that if carrier pigeons hadn't gone extinct, I would have a flock of them, right? And be
I
tying
will.
little notes to their
Yeah.
legs, like if that's what gets it done, that's what gets it done. All right. So cool. We've got the trigger, we've got making it repeatable. So having a series of follow-up steps, not just one, and those follow-up steps crossing communication channels. The next piece of this is making it improvable for the eye and trim. So how do I make this process better? Either, maybe at the end of the quarter, I review it and I say, hey, everybody, we were using this follow-up system. Let's take a look at the results. How do I make it better in your model? Or how have you found to help your salespeople make their follow-up better?
I think knowing when to close it.
Mm,
Sales reps that struggle or that are new tend to go down the rabbit hole and really chase business that maybe it's not our niche. Maybe it's not what we do, and they continue to follow it, or the customer said no, and they have this false sense of hope that's really wasting their time. So the
yeah.
way to make it improvable is to go through, maybe monthly, and really just analyze who's in my pipeline. Is this still real, or is this the same guy that's told me, yeah, give me a call back in 2 weeks for the last year, because he's too afraid to tell me no.
Which happens. Okay, and so knowing when to close an account, and so for you and your salespeople, is that defined on a time period? If they haven't responded after 4 touches or 3 months, how do you train your salespeople to make sure that they know when to close an account?
It differs. A
Mm,
lot of times, if you've heard from multiple sources that they don't utilize our service, you can probably go ahead and close it. If you've had a really abrupt conversation, stop calling me. Maybe you should put that on the ice for a while. It's kind of knowing if they utilize staffing or not. A lot of times,
And so if they utilize staffing, if they had that conversation at some point where they said, I could potentially, then the account may stay open for a while, even if there's a rest period of a quarter, maybe, right? Or between touches, right? Is that what you're saying?
right?
Okay.
Maybe they finish the hospital and they don't have a current need, but they're gonna continue to build something else. So maybe a new opportunity, a new channel opens with them. So it's about
Gotcha.
closing one and opening up another.
Okay, and so if I'm then I got a trigger for this, I've made it repeatable. It is improvable because I'm knowing when to close an account, which I imagine as the industry changes, as the world changes, as the vaccines come out, construction's going to shift. I know, especially like that. Just saying, by this point, that's when we need to close an account. That might work today, but it does need to be updated, right, as the world changes, and even among a single pipeline, I'd imagine as well. And I'd love to hear from you for your top salespeople. So the 17 or 18 that you manage, the ones that have the most built out pipelines. How many prospects are your top salespeople really tracking inside of a pipeline?
I'd say close to 75 to 100 with a
Right.
conversation at some point.
Gotcha. So they've had a conversation with those 75 to 100, and they know at some point I could potentially came out of that prospect's mouth. So
Because
they are
again,
qualified.
some customers might have 7, 8 decision makers. So maybe they have 3 or 4 things going within that one company.
Mm,
Um, so I
interesting.
mean,
Multiple deals. Yeah.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And so we have the trigger on this system. It is repeatable. It is improvable. And we want to make sure that the M factors in as well and that it's measurable. And usually measurable looks two ways. It's one, how do I make sure my salespeople are using this? So how do I know that there aren't a bunch of orphan accounts that are qualified floating around in my salespeople's pipelines? And then on the other side, it's how do I measure the effectiveness of this system? And that is my follow-up process actually converting more conversations? So let's talk about the first one, because as a sales manager, this is something that I know we keep track of. How do I make sure that my salespeople are using the follow-up methods that I'm advising they use?
I mean, you start with kind of their leads. Where are we calling at today? And that's where you really lean on your local managers, to look into their business. What leads are they going? Are they going through the entire process? Because a lot of times it's not so much lack of effort. I think we hire people that work really hard. It's lack of process. And when you're
Mm,
missing step 2, it really affects you on step 6 and 7. Um, so it's peeling back that onion and not just looking at how many calls and see where at the process are we skipping a beat. And a lot of times, some really simple fixes can lead to a lot of revenue. A lot of
and
success.
I've found, and help me, if this is great, thumbs up, but if not, please educate me. I've found that if I want to make a simple fix across a wide array of salespeople, that means they have to be inside a CRM and they have to be using some kind of a system, even if they tweak, the little individual parts of it, depending on the client or the prospect. Do you find that to be the case as well, that it is possible to make systemic change as long as everybody's on the same sheet of music?
100%. And I found that if you make small changes, it's the best. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. What small tweaks can we make in your business? Because you don't want people to be scared of, oh my gosh, she's asking me to do so much more. I'm not. I'm asking you to make a little tweak and do it the right way, and you're going to get a lot more feedback.
So maybe follow up instead of not at all, follow up twice. And then watch the conversion happen after that. So making it measurable to know, hey, are my salespeople chasing the right leads, and then measurable as well. Do you measure the efficacy or the efficiency of your follow up on generated conversations after somebody might have fallen off, or do you measure that on, do we have a proposal out, or whatever that next step is in your business model?
So it depends on what territory. If it's an existing territory, I'm looking at, how many proposals are we sending out? How many recs are we putting in for orders? If it's a new territory, I'm looking for how many contracts we're sending out, because those new contracts are going to be the biggest drive in business.
The leading
indicator for me if they don't have an account. So.
All right, I dig it, man. So we've got a trigger, we've got it repeatable, we've got it improvable, and we've got it measurable. And final question, and this is something that we definitely track in my company, and that we help other organizations as well. What would you say the collective cost of all of the accounts that we've forgotten to follow up with might be? Would you consider that in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, or would you put it in the millions?
In regards to revenue, I would say in the millions.
Millions. And this is, it's not like we're pointing the finger at your company either. Like, this is systemic across salespeople until we figured out to start using process and systems, to your point. Wow. I mean, the amount of lost revenue, it kind of makes me hurt. I could have probably bought an island, just because I forgot to follow up. I didn't have that follow-up step. So I know this system, if we get it implemented, if you're listening and you build that for yourself today, maybe you'll buy that island. And when you do, I hope you invite me. All right. So Alex, I want to make sure we wrap you up in time, brother. Please tell us a little bit more about where we can learn about you, your company, the great things that you guys have doing. If somebody is listening to this and they know about somebody in the construction industry needing good staffing, good people, I want to make sure I send them back to you. So give us, how do we follow up with you, man?
So you can go to our website, which is staffccs.com. We're headquartered out of Charlotte, but we're currently staffing construction projects throughout the United States. Whether you're traveling or you have a local project, we focus in skilled trades. So electricians, plumbers, mechanics, things like that, not necessarily just general labor. That would be the easiest place to find us, would be our website. And then from there, we can get a local account manager, somebody that knows their territory, their labor pool, in touch. So that's a big thing for us.
Perfect. And then just to make it clear for everybody listening, you guys on the public sector, you industrial, you residential, business?
So anything but single family homes. Okay. We do federal work, government work, industrial, distribution, commercial, pretty multifamily, anything but a single family home, just about.
Love it, man. All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you so much for your insight today as a salesperson that's on the ground managing salespeople. And for all the listeners, as we wrap this up, make sure that you are following us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Look up Bulletproof Selling. You'll find us there for our live streams. And of course, check out our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and anywhere you can get a podcast. So for more sales systems to help you replace hope with certainty, check out the free resources that we have coming up every single week, and some awesome things rolling out here in early 2021 over at www.bulletproofselling.systems. Sean Rhodes here. It's been a pleasure serving you alongside Alex. Alex, let's go out there, man. Let's make selling bulletproof.
All right. Appreciate it, Sean. Thank you.